là, va calme, s'en va dans l'oubli éternel.
You know, I spent my whole life hearing French people say sacre bleu, and the whole time I thought they were just saying suck my balls. Turns out it actually just means something about the color blue. French? Yeah, not my forte. Nasty ass language, sounds gross as hell, and I'm just not big on France in general. So, when at the beginning of the year, I'm off sailing for a month away at sea and completely out of touch with the world, I come home and hear nothing but constant glaze for a French game being instantly crowned Game of the Year. I was furious and boycotted it immediately. I was looking forward to Doom the Dark Ages more than my own divorce finalizing, and before it even came out, people were yapping that it doesn't stand a chance to a game that came out of absolutely nowhere. So, being the contrarian I am, I vowed to curse its name for life and slander it at every turn, and I would never play it. And if it were any other day, that would be the end of the story and the video would just end right here. But as you can see, that's not what happened. So, what made me change my mind and end up playing it? What softened my heart? Well, it's both simple and stupid, and there's maybe 3 reasons, kinda. First, my best friend of all time was part of the hype bandwagon, and she used the words French Xenoblade to describe it. And I love Xenoblade. Specifically 1 and 3. I hate Xenoblade 2 more than I hate the Antichrist. Actually, Xenoblade 2 might just be the Antichrist. Now, maybe she said that at the right time and on the right day, because it did in fact make me raise a brow. But I was still pretty stubborn. But then she went and did the one thing that I cannot resist. My ultimate kryptonite. And handpicked the best songs from the soundtrack and presented them to me in order of how I should hear them. And I folded. My biggest weakness to getting me to try a new game in any situation is a good soundtrack. Sometimes the right song hits me like a bolt of lightning and gives me just such an incredible high that I have to go straight to the source. For example, some years ago I heard by chance the battle theme for Final Fantasy X, and it was almost like a miracle to my ears for some reason. I became almost infatuated with the melody to the point where one thing led to another, and I bought and played the game specifically because of one song that I heard. And make no mistake, Final Fantasy X ain't exactly short. At least not for me. I'm fucking retarded with some RPGs. But I saw through it and was rewarded with the rest of Final Fantasy X's divine soundtrack and its masterclass narrative, all because I chased after one song. Now, it's not always sunshine and rainbows with this curse of mine, because the same curse led me to play Xenoblade 2, and despite having a god-sent soundtrack, it is officially my least favorite game of all time, bar none. My best friend knows me inside and out, and of course she knew that the only way to get me to budge would be with the music. And I gotta say, she played her cards a bit too well. The 3 tracks she sent me were enough to convince me within the hour. But then she sent me a clip of her gameplay, and I caught a battle theme in the background, and it was in my cart at that exact instant. Well played, Raven. Well played. Now, I didn't play it right away. I actually waited about a month or so because I bought a 5080 Doom the Dark Ages themed graphics card and waited for it to be delivered so I could play this game at an extremely good performance and quality. From what I saw, the graphical fidelity and art direction were pretty high-end, so I figured I'd just wait a little longer. Now, if you remember from 2 seconds ago, I said I had 3 sorta reasons why I changed my mind, and the last reason for me was the wait. I began to do a complete 180 on how I felt about this game, and I hadn't even played it yet. I went from cursing its name and praying for its downfall to eagerly awaiting the time I can finally experience this game that's gonna knock my socks off. I finally started looking into the game and seeing what it was all about, because at some point it hit me that I actually had no clue what the story is even about. I heard absolutely nothing. So I watched a few trailers, I got a kinda sorta good idea of what the story was about, and not gonna lie, shit was starting to get pretty hype now. It seemed like some sort of extermination event that would lead to humanity's extinction, and every year their only hope is to send those next in line for death on an expedition to stop this from happening. Man, that does sound kinda lit. The stakes are high, and the odds are begging to be defied. There seemed to be so much mystery to explore with this world. Like, why are we here? What happened to the world? Why are we all French? Who or what is the paintress? Who is Renoir, and what is his angle? So much of this stuff just had me excited to find out. And as far as answers go, I was pretty much blind. Funny enough, when I listened to Un Viatame for the first time, from the very little French that I knew, I was confused as fuck about what they were singing about. So I looked up an English translation and read the entirety of it and was just even more confused. I remembered practically nothing about it and left it at that. Good thing too, because that song is a humongous spoiler bomb. I remembered the name Aline though, and wondered who that was. I took a lucky guess and was actually correct, but that didn't really mean much. But nevertheless, those are in essence the 3 reasons why I decided to put away my belligerent pride once and for all, turn a new leaf, and finally play this game. Without further ado, here's what I have to say about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Now, you may have read the title and figured since I've openly admitted to being a contrarian that I did not enjoy the game and I'm going to just give it a bad review simply because everyone else loves it. Is that the case? Well, no, actually, not exactly. I'm saying this for transparency's sake, and I don't want to hide stuff when I'm giving my full, complete thoughts, so you understand where I'm coming from. I've historically been a contrarian on a myriad of topics, sometimes just for the love of the game. And as you can see from earlier, when I saw a game getting universal praise, my gut reaction was just to go full hater mode. Is it the most mature thing to do?
No.
But luckily, that part of me is taking a backseat for the overwhelming majority of what I have to say. If I may pat myself on the back, I've done extremely well putting my childish habits aside and enjoying this game for what it is. Mostly. Let's start off with stuff that I just can't deny is good. At the top of the list, you already saw this coming. Everybody knows that this is undeniably one of the best soundtracks in a game I've heard in a long time. I knew this was the case beforehand anyway. I heard that there was 8 hours of original music, and prior to playing the game, I listened to the whole thing, and I was awestruck. So seeing where these songs went in tangent with the narrative and visuals, man, that was a treat. It was like an immersive dive into a world of music that just engulfed itself into my soul. Truly the greatest and most amazing aspect of this entire game, in my humble opinion, is the music. Bravo, well done, and praise to the GOAT Lorien Tester for his phenomenal work on the soundtrack. It seems to be unanimously agreed that this soundtrack is an S tier, so I don't think anyone will have a problem with this take. The next great aspect of the game is the visuals. I'm very happy I waited till I got my 5080 to play this, because this game can be an absolute treat to the eyes. There's so much beauty to behold at any moment in the game. The graphical fidelity and rendering are stunning and never once interfered with performance, giving me the best of both worlds. Oh, and the art direction is also generally good. I'll admit, I really didn't like all of it, which is fine. I'll get into some of that later. But the vibe and aesthetics hit, and when they hit hard enough that I don't actually have anything to bash on, to be completely honest. Settings and locations like the Dark Shores, the Manor, Lumiere Under Siege, and Monoko's hideout, they really stood out to me. There's some awesome places to discover, and there was really only 1 or 2 places that I just didn't care for. Again, I'll get to that later. Other than that, this game is a feast for the eyes. Furthermore, the sound design and voice acting are also top-notch, and generally made the world a lot more immersive, especially with such a stacked lineup of talented actors. This is an absolute win. Dialogue between characters is pretty natural, competently performed, and even really moving at times. times. Job well done to all involved. Now for gameplay, oh man, the gameplay is really something to behold. I really like the twist on turn-based combat that Expedition 33 brings to the table. The simple addition of parrying in almost any game is a huge win, and it's implemented here with style. The myriad of options you have at any turn you take isn't overwhelming at all. It invites a sense of freedom to the player, which I really like. I really enjoyed the upgrade system. I think it's really unique and works fantastic for customizing how you want to play the game. There's a great variety of weapons to choose from, some obviously better than others, but nevertheless straightforward and good quality. I do wish there was an option to change the appearance of one weapon but keep the stats of another, like mix and match them a little bit. I think that would be cool, but it's really no biggie. Overall, the gameplay and combat is flashy with substance. There's tremendous depth to how the game can be played, down to the unique mechanics of every character. Seriously, every character handles like a totally different ballgame by the time you're in the swing of things, and it blends together extremely well with moments where everyone acts as one. It's a great teamwork simulation, highlighting the uniqueness of everyone, but giving a sense of camaraderie and companionship in every big fight. So everything seems to be good here, right? You know, I love the music, I dig the visuals and aesthetics, I like the performance of the characters, and I think the gameplay is engaging, unique, and rewarding. And I'm impressed that this was done by a smaller group of developers that did it out of love. What else is there to say, huh? Game of the year, right guys? What is there left to talk about? Oh, yeah. I have to talk about it, don't I? The story. Narrative. Yeah, that shindig. Yeah. It's... Okay. Let's take a step back. I intentionally saved this for last because this is where I have the strongest opinions. And if your process of elimination works fine, you'll probably realize that I'm not exactly about to give it unbridled praise. But does that mean that I think it's bad? And here's something that I want to put out there right now before anyone gets the wrong idea. I'm not going to call it bad. I'm also not going to outright call it good. But I really need you to listen to what I have to say because it is far more complex than my feelings on everything else. Remember how I said I found it suspicious that I heard almost nothing about the story when hearing Universal Glaze? Yeah. That was kinda weird. How hard is it to say that a mysterious woman paints a new number on a rock every year and everyone whose age matches that number turns to ash and dies? How hard is it to say that the premise is a band of people who will die next year are sent on an annual expedition to stop this woman? That's pretty straightforward, right? Makes perfect sense. That right there is a banger of a premise. That level of high stakes had me invested heavily before I even bought the game. So again, I ask, why on earth did nobody fucking talk about it? Because if you've played the game, you already know why. If you've beaten Expedition 33, you know that the story is a huge those who know situation. And if you know, you know. And if you don't, I'm giving you this final warning. If you do not want the story of Expedition 33 spoiled in its entirety, get the fuck out. Last chance. You ready? Alright then. So here's essentially why nobody discusses the specifics of the story publicly. Because the original premise of the game is a humongous fucking lie. At the ass end of Act 2, when you think you've saved the world, an actual literal truth nuke goes off, and the curtain falls and everything is laid out. The real story of Expedition 33 is not about the expedition at all. In fact, it has almost fuck all to do with the entire original premise in general. The elements that make up the premise are still relevant, but not in the same way that they appear to be. Let me explain. The story of Expedition 33 is actually about a family with superpowers. This family has a unique ability to paint entire worlds on a canvas that actually come to life, and what more, they can live in them if they so desire. The husband and wife taught their 3 children how to paint worlds. Vibrant, colorful, all in their image. They are gods over these worlds, able to alter each other canvases too if they so desire. However, one day there was a tragic fire in the house in which the family resided, and their only son, Verso, was engulfed in the flames and was burned to death. The world of Expedition 33, the one that we thought to be our our reality, is actually a world painted by Verso, who was really just a kid. His parents were grief-stricken, and the events of the game are the product of his parents fighting over the fate of the last memory of their son. Furthermore, the only remaining piece of his soul is in this canvas, and that piece of his soul is being forced to paint it and keep it alive. Even in death, poor Verso finds no rest. His mother, who mourns profoundly, lives in this world to be as close to the memory of her son as possible, whereas his father, who loves him dearly, wants his wife to stop being such a bleeding heart crybaby and come back home so everyone can just move on. So the paintress, who we once thought was this cruel and merciless deity who wants to end humanity, is actually Verso's mother, Aline. Aline is not painting the number of death. The number is a warning. The number is her way of telling the world, hey, this is how many years I can hold off my husband until he nukes this universe. Do with that what you will. She is not the source of the death. It's actually Renoir, the father of Verso. As Aline's powers of defense wane, Renoir's power grows. She cannot hold him back forever, and when that number reaches 0, Renoir will obliterate this canvas and the last living memory of Verso will be gone. This explains the gommage in its entirety and flips the script completely. The paintress is a victim. A mourning mother trying to live out a life inside a world her dead son made to cope with the insufferable grief. That's pretty intense, really. So when our heroes make history by reaching the monolith and defeating the paintress and expel her from the canvas, their victory couldn't be more hollow. Because then, Renoir's truth nuke drops. Literally. And everyone, simply everyone fucking dies. Wow. I'll admit, when that happened, I had absolutely no idea how to feel. We get the context for pretty much everything mere seconds before the truth nuke goes off, and as I was hearing this, my thoughts were, what the fuck ever, you're a liar, everyone's a liar. But then everyone died, and I immediately ate my words. To then I wondered, so wait, we're just actually telling the truth now? So now you understand why nobody publicly talks about the story. Because where the fuck do you even begin? Do you tell the lie the game is built on and explain the gommage, the expedition, and the evil paintress? Or do you tell the truth and spoil the entire game, essentially ruining dozens of hours of narrative buildup to a humongous twist that changes literally everything about what you thought the game was saying? What do you even do? Well, I'll come out and say it. I'll fucking tell the truth. I already gave a spoiler warning, and I'm not scared about talking about the premise of a year-old game. The two stories that make up Expedition 33, on their own, are pretty fucking cool. Kinda. The expedition to stop the gommage is definitely my favorite. The Desandre family story is... well, I'll get to that. Here's where we meet my problem. I do not think these two stories merge as gracefully as everyone thinks they do. Really, I don't think they mesh together at all. And here's why. Simply put, this is a spectacular mess. The entire weight of the original premise is just fucking gone. Argue with the wall. This is the honest truth. I fucking hate that. The truth about the Desandre family being gods fighting each other in their grief of Verso is impactful, only in a vacuum. This is directly at the cost of the weight of the previous narrative, being an extinction-level event that will eventually mercilessly dwindle humanity to ash. The problem is, this exact narrative within the context of this world can be rewritten over and over and over again by literally any one of these family members with a simple fucking paintbrush. The only reason this one is so special is because it contains a piece of Verso's soul, and that's the last bit of his existence. Okay, cool. So fucking what? You can't use this piece of his soul to bring him back to life. He's essentially living as a sweatshop worker in his own creation. There is absolutely nothing about this world that will actually bring him back to life, and the expeditions are just a fleeting afterthought. So what is Aline actually doing? Hey, wait. Actually, yeah. That is a good-ass question. What the fuck is Aline doing? Yeah, you know, the fucking paintress? See, I understand she's trying to hold Renoir back. She's trying to keep the world alive as best she can, and all the while gives like zero fuck about the inhabitants of the world her son made. Again, why? You know, we actually aren't the first expedition to figure this out, really. Apparently, Expedition 30 made it to the paintress and learned the truth and just didn't make it back in time. So Aline is, I guess, fully capable of telling people the truth, and never once after decided to tell anyone living in this world the truth? Am I supposed to feel bad bad for her taking the blame and living as the villain in everyone's eyes because she just wants to live in the world her son made because she can't move on? Honestly, I could give a fuck less. Seriously, you mean to tell me that she was willing to work the soul of her son like a fucking dog for an entire in-universe century just to live somewhere where the fake version of her son, all grown up, doesn't even want to live around her? Like, when fake Verso shows up, she acts all surprised. She finds out he's not actually real, freaks out, and then we do the boss fight, and that's it. Give me a fucking break. You're spending an entire century fighting back and forth with your husband over fucking nothing. Within the 66 years you miserable sacks of shit spent fighting each other, how was this ever worth living in? I get that a disagreement like this could probably take a minute or two to work out. But 66 years? And for what? You're living in a fake world where your fake son doesn't want to see you, and the only real remaining piece of his actual existence is stuck indefinitely holding a world together against his fucking will. How are any of you guys okay with this? Aline is a fucking bonehead. There, I said it. This whole family is stupid. You guys need to grow the fuck up. Loss is hard. I understand grief causes people to do a lot of stuff that they wouldn't normally do. It breaks character, truly. However, given that you guys have godlike superpowers over worlds you create, this is the dumbest possible outcome I can think of. Do you really expect me to believe that nobody thought twice about this? I guess I'm bitter that not only does this ultimate reveal just sort of crumble under a critical lens, but it also just completely undermines the weight of the original premise. And worst of all is the conclusion of the story, which is entirely my fault in retrospect. I did choose the ending, but I'm still gonna bitch about it anyway. My favorite character was Mael. From Act 1, my goat was Mael. I admired her bravery, her resolve, her strength. It was inspiring. I was most invested in her story because in truth, this is her story. And then at the very end, I'm punished for sticking with my goat and choosing her ending. And then when she brings everyone back to life and I realize this victory was hollow, I suddenly couldn't deny it anymore. Everything that came before this was completely hollow. And I didn't feel hollow inside. No, I'm not being poetic. The story was gutted and lost every ounce of impact that it had. I see people singing praises to how this game handles loss and grief, to which I wonder, the fuck? Here's how you handle grief, okay? Go drink enough caffeine to kill a horse and hit chest after. Sorry, all jokes aside, I don't really care how this game tackles such concepts. Like, at all. I also disagree profusely because this game went from boldly killing off main characters and expecting you to care to making the weight of life in this world essentially meaningless. And I mean it. Absolutely none of what we've done fucking matters. We were all piss ants throwing ourselves to the wild to stop essentially a humongous family tantrum because the people with the superpower to create simply were not creative enough in their problem-solving skills. Go fucking figure! You know, when I was playing this, I got the feeling that I'd seen this story somewhere before. The more it went on, I was feeling a lingering sense of familiarity. But the whole time, I just couldn't put my finger on it. But then, Act 3 came along, and in an instant, it finally clicked all at once. And I remember just where I heard the story before. Believe it or not, this exact story was told 30 fucking years ago by a little-known game by the name of Xeno Mist. Gotcha. Perhaps drawing inspiration from the hit computer game of 1993, Doom, published by id Software. Okay, sorry, I'll stop. Myst. The parallels are pretty astonishing. For you youngins who don't know Myst, it's a puzzle game taking place on a deserted island. Scattered around this island are mysterious books called linking books that transport you into another world inside of the book. Eventually, you start to realize that this island you're exploring was home to an entire library of worlds, and more importantly, the home of a family who reigned over them. Long ago, a father named Atris had a secret power to write words on paper in such a mysterious manner that the book would become become a gateway or a link to the world that he was writing about. This ability was known simply as the art. Atris had a wife named Catherine, who in this game is absent, and her whereabouts are a mystery for the time being. However, Atris and Catherine had two sons, Cirrus and Agonar. Atris had written an extensive library of linking books to other worlds, places with civilizations, cultures, and lore. Atris learned the art from his father. It was a skill passed down by the generations. Atris intended to teach his sons, Cirrus and Agonar, the art, and he even wrote several ages dedicated to instructing them in the principles of age writing, which was a significant investment of time and effort. However, the brothers grew up, and they seemed to be more interested in exploring already existing worlds, and their intentions were not pure. They began to show signs of greed, irresponsibility, and malice, particularly by plundering the ages Atris had already written and abusing their inhabitants. Atris eventually came to fear that they would abuse the power of the art, potentially turning out like his own power-hungry father and exploiting worlds to act as gods. Because of this fear, he ultimately stopped the instruction and never imparted the full principles of the art unto them. Since Atris never taught them the art, Cirrus and Agonar did not understand the principles of writing. They had only ever visited ages that Atris took them to, and Atris would always ensure that there was a returning linking book available. They were conditioned to assume that a way back was always present. The brothers eventually grew so ambitious with malice that they destroyed Atris's entire library and trapped their parents to continue their looting spree. Atris was stuck on Denis, and Catherine was stuck in Riven. Atris, after realizing what they were doing, created two special linking books, the Red Book and the Blue Book, designed to act as prison books. The brothers, expecting to find new ages to conquer, deliberately went against Atris's warnings and used these two books. These books were written to be incomplete ages, severing them from the real world and effectively trapping Cirrus and Agonar in a kind of limbo, or prison. They had no way to return to Mist because they had never learned the art to write their own return books, and Atris had been careful not to leave one there for them. In the events of the game, the brothers speak to the player from the prisons in the Red and Blue Book, beckoning us to free them. Little do we know that freeing them from their prison would actually trap us in their place. To properly finish the game, we actually free their father instead, who goes to the books and destroys them, presumably killing his sons and ending their tyranny once and for all. Until we learn in the later games that they're not actually dead, and these ages weren't exactly incomplete as we thought. They also have a sister that actually knows the art, and there's a million retcons that happen in the later games. What the actual fuck? If I had to guess, this is where Expedition 33 draws its inspiration for the tale of the Desandre family. But the reason Myst worked 30 years ago is because when we put it all together, it wasn't a rug pull. It wasn't a charade drop. It was putting the pieces together while having all those pieces maintain the same weight and role that they had from the beginning. We know the worlds in the linking books aren't exactly real. I mean, we can infer that from the symbolism of them being inside of a book. It doesn't get spelled out to us crystal clear early on, but it's never really been a question whether or not these places are real. The real tension comes from us meeting the two brothers in their prison. How they talk to us, how they offer us a story and plea for their freedom. They tell us that their asshole father locked them away because he's a tyrannical dickhead. But when we're finally given the chance to talk to Atris, it makes all the sense in the world what's actually going on. The mystery is solved, the brothers are sealed away extra forever. Until they fucking aren't 11 years later, what the fuck? And Atris leaves us on a cliffhanger about the real villain of the story, his father, Gen. Now compare this to Expedition 33.
Wanted to make a new life for myself.
Expedition 33 is kind of like if the perspective of Myst was told from a random group of inhabitants from one of Atris's many books. That story would have fell flat almost immediately. The strength of the mystery of the story of Myst is that we know these worlds aren't real, and finding out how they were made and the tragedy behind them is the reward for our exploration and judgment of Cirrus and Agonar's characters. If, for example, we were inhabitants of the Channelwood Age and we found out that the tyrants who made themselves god in our worlds are actually just big fat greedy babies who get punished by daddy for being bad in his book, I'd flip my shit and uninstall the game. Finding out the mystery that way would blow so much cock that I don't think anybody would have played Riven 4 years later. But because Expedition 33 allures players with super high-end artistic talent and engaging gameplay, it almost gaslights its players into thinking these two narratives work fine in tangent with each other. But when it boils down to it, it just seems like they wanted to have their cake and needed to. It wanted to act like a JRPG where you go on a high-stakes journey that ends with you killing a god, but makes that journey essentially minuscule and meaningless by the time all is said and done. But then they expect you to be really invested in the family drama of people with superpowers who just spent 66 years stalemating in a pants-pissing contest over their dead son.
Dude, what the fuck?
Show us porn in the classroom.
Now, believe you me, I didn't intentionally intend to go compare this to another unrelated product. I thought I knew that if I did, I would compare it to Xenoblade, because it does draw extremely obvious references to Xenoblade as well. However, I've already drawn one too many comparisons for the day, and at the end of the day, I'm reviewing this game for what it is, not what it's based on. So, forgive my yap. I was just feeling extremely nostalgic for Myst. By the way, I'm not saying Myst is a better game either. Actually, far from it. It's a great puzzle game and a great mystery story, and I do like the music a lot, but I'll admit straight up that Expedition 33 has far better gameplay, graphics, acting, and music. And look, the elements that Expedition 33 gets right can't be overlooked. I really was on board with most of what was going on up until the end of Act 2. I was most excited to experience the story I was handed, but I was rewarded with a total boner kill. Seriously, too much of this just doesn't make sense. Plenty of the rules in the world start to crumble under analysis as well. Like, for example, getting lost in the canvas. I don't want to cop out and call this a lazy plot device, but just think with me here for a minute. This is supposedly why Aline behaves the way that she did, and why she became this estranged psycho in the canvas. There's a few risks that come with being in the canvas that get explained to us. One is that you're not really supposed to be in there too long, and two is that you can lose yourself to it and go crazy. However, the extents of this craziness aren't laid out very clearly and actually seem kind of inconsistent. For example, Aline in this lost state once upon a time was able to lay out the entire story of what was going on to a prior expedition. Presumably. I don't know if it's specified that she said so or not, but I think there's evidence that she said so. For one, she's pretty coherent actually. She isn't a rabid animal that attacks on sight. She's just sort of there off in her own world. She actually talks to us, the 33rd expedition, and knows how to do basic things like count. So getting lost doesn't make you rabid, it doesn't make you stupid, it really doesn't seem to impede you that much in general. Maybe it's just more of an emotional thing, I think, where getting lost just makes you hell-bent on acting out whatever emotion you're feeling the strongest. For Aline, that would obviously be grief. Expedition 60 reached the monolith, which is where Aline was. I think it's a safe bet to assume that she told them what was going on and sent them off on their merry way. So I assume that the reason Aline is keeping this going for 66 in-universe years is because the grief she's feeling was so strong she got lost in it and just couldn't give it up. Which, I mean, okay. That solves maybe one question that I have. But then I have another. Why the fuck are you even here at all? Everyone here knows that the last piece of Verso's soul is in this painting, which sounds oh so poetic and sweet. But guess what, guys? Everyone knows that there's nothing this soul piece can do to bring him back. Like, actually nothing. In fact, being in this world only makes it worse. And they know this because Painted Verso knows this. He's been able to feel it forever, and there's simply no way that he just didn't tell them this. They had already known that there's nothing that they can do to bring him back, and on top of ignoring that, actively chose to make Baby Verso's soul a sweatshop worker for as long as an entire century. Furthermore, on top of knowing this would do nothing, and then finding out that your son's soul is stuck in his own painted personal pizza of hell, you actively chose to risk losing yourself in the world too? Are you guys just fucking stupid? Well, not Renoir actually. He's the one making the most sense here. This painting has just got to go. It genuinely is the only way that their son's soul can be at rest. But Maëlle, aka Alicia, is not lost in the painting, is not grief-stricken, and is not impaired in any way, shape, or form, and with a clear consciousness wants to keep her brother's soul in agony. I'm so fucking sorry. This is actually the dumbest and stupidest shit I have ever fucking seen. It was possibly excusable for Aline to be this way, but her only sin was being a fucking spoonhead and risking the weirdest condition I've ever seen and being a total weirdo for 66 years. Maëlle, however, does not have this problem and somehow chooses to keep the cycle of agony going with full knowledge. And poor Renoir, well, he's just made to look like the bad guy, but really, he's just the family guy. Actually, fuck, this entire game is really just one humongous Family Guy cutaway gag. Holy crap, Lois. This is like that one time our son died in a fire, so we lived inside of his painting and fought each other over the last piece of his soul for 66 years. What the fuck? See, this could have worked out, actually. This could have been fixed by one simple change to the entire narrative that would make this whole thing work again. With one teeny tiny change, this would have been one of the greatest stories ever told in gaming. And it's almost baffling that they didn't consider this. But here it is. Make Verso's soul able to bring him back to life. If this was the real stake, everything would have fallen into place perfectly. The twist would have been beautiful. Renoir being the villain would make sense, and Aline being the victim would be touching, and choosing your ending would have a bajillion times more weight to it. You can either seize his soul and, as a family, play God with it by bringing him back to life with unknown consequences, or make the tough decision to let his soul lay at rest and not tamper with a soul that isn't yours. Man, that's actually pretty deep, you know. And okay, yes, this wouldn't solve the problem of the original premise now being irrelevant, but I'd be much more willing to overlook it. If Renoir was just trying to stop his family from playing God and bringing a human soul back to life, but his family wanted to get their son back, man, that's a super compelling story right there. Maybe add some nuance to it. Like, for example, this really hasn't been done before, and nobody actually knows the repercussions of bringing someone back from the dead in a canvas. Add a sense of risk and reward to it. The story as is currently has a total lack of reward, and some of the family with a completely clear consciousness went through with it anyway. That's fucking stupid. Make there be an actual reward for this with an already existing element to the story. It's that fucking simple, guys. I cannot be the only person who's thought of this. It sure seems to be that way, though, because I see nothing but unbridled praise for how this story tackles grief. But I ain't falling for it. This has gaslit the masses into thinking it's artistic and deep, when it's really autistic and cheap. This story fucking blows, dude. The expeditions ain't real, Gustaban's death isn't real, Verso isn't real, and there's absolutely no reason why this would have ever gone on for as long as it did. The mechanics of getting lost are ambiguous and feel like a total cop-out, and the entire ordeal crumbles under a critical lens. I'm so sorry that I have to be the one who breaks this to the entire fucking world. See, it's an interesting ordeal, where I pretty much like every single aspect of a game, but not its central story. These are usually the most frustrating games for me to review because all it really needs is that last element to click, and then it's a total game changer. But when everything good is built around something really lame, it really sucks. I still really love this soundtrack, and I still listen to it very often to this day, but the narrative is absolutely unworthy of it. The lyrics of Un Viatame are essentially weightless and hit like a pool noodle. The world building is also intimately tied to the narrative, and as much as I absolutely loved exploring the world, as soon as Act 3 hit, I had completely and utterly lost all interest in its exploration. It's like when you're playing Minecraft Survival, and you're struggling to make satisfying progress, so for a brief moment you activate creative mode and think, I'll just give myself a couple diamonds, no biggie. But suddenly, your sense of reward is totally gone. If you get stuck again, you just keep reaching into creative mode, and suddenly survival mode just isn't hitting, and the world is ruined. That's exactly what happens to this game when you hit Act 3. The mystery is solved. The entire planet is a charade of pissants dying for funsies while mommy and daddy fight over custody of Verso, who's stuck in a Nike factory making Jordans for pennies on the dollar. And it really fucking blows, dude, because this world is fucking beautiful. I complimented the art direction earlier and mentioned I only didn't care for a few locations, and it's really just two I didn't care for. And it's easy to explain because they're both the same thing. I didn't care for the Axons or their locations. Yeah, look, blah, 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 look. I get what they're trying to represent. It's members of the Desandre family, yada, yada, yada. This is surface-level symbolism. What is this, fucking amateur hour? I especially didn't care for the dancing Axon or her location. It was slow, unfun, and felt almost pretentious. Like, it was trying oh so hard to be artistic and beautiful. Like, what? This shit looks like Aladdin landed on Geonosis, dude. Get a fucking grip. This is lame. But every other location I really do like. But every other location I really do like. Lumiere is a really cool location. This battlefield where you go off to fight Pontiff Sullivan, also really cool. Oh, and this underwater place at the beginning of the game, these are really well done. Although, I do have to be blunt, these aren't exactly groundbreaking by any means necessary. I won't go as far as the haters and call it Unreal Engine 5 slop, but I'll give it a B+, with some A- standouts. Look, this game didn't reinvent the wheel. It's a game. Albeit, it's a pretty good one. A fun one with a jumbo mess of a story, but it does have its merits. When it does things right, it does them right on a tremendous level. The cutscenes are wonderful. The combat is very creative and engaging. This is fundamentally a good fucking game. Despite the boner kill of a story, I had a good and fun time with this game from start to finish because it really was just fun to play. And for what it's worth, I'm pretty willing to try out whatever the next Clair Obscur title is, since I hear it's gonna be some kind of anthology. Yeah, sure, dude, I'll check it out. If it looks good, I might get it. But now it's time for me to put the brush down upon this canvas and rate Expedition 33 once and for all. When taking everything into consideration, this game truly lives up to its title, Clair Obscur. Clarity and obscurity. The clarity shines brilliantly with its magnificent devotion to the arts that went into the game. Music, designs, acting, and characters. This is a well-seasoned and slow-roasted bite to eat right here. Sincerely, well done on every technical and artistic aspect of the game. But within the obscurity lies a story that is convoluted and actually really retarded. It has very compelling moments, or more accurately, it wants to have those moments, and you can feel them. Some people, I guess, feel them stronger than I do, and they see what they want to see. Maybe the elements of the story touched your heart more than it did mine. To that I say, I envy you. I've buried family and friends before. I'm no stranger to grief, and I'm certainly not a stranger to heartbreak. But in the face of the inevitable calamity of the universe, you don't bow to despair. You have to be broken down first to be built back up. The lesson that grief and heartbreak is meant to teach you is that losing things builds character. Overcome it and you will become stronger. Renoir seems to get this better than anyone, and he's made out to be the bad guy. So on a personal and philosophical level, I believe that Expedition 33's story is a failure. A beautiful disaster whose heart was in the right place, but a tremendous letdown that will ultimately drag the score down. A final rating I will give Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a 7.1 out of 10. If the good aspects were lacking in any sort of way whatsoever, admittedly, this would be way lower. But they sincerely carried the game from start to finish. You certainly will not have a bad time playing this game. It's extremely fun and rewarding. I need to give it the highest compliments I can for its innovation on turn-based combat and leveling up. It is, in fact, a one-of-a-kind experience, one that I do think you won't find anywhere else. But you know what else is a one-of-a-kind experience? You know what else has been innovating its own genre since the beginning? A generational and timeless series that has consistently built the genre forward every time it drops a new title? You know, the real game of the year for 2025? I'm talking about none other than the father of the first-person shooter genre. It's Doom. And Doom the Dark Ages blows Expedition 33 out of the fucking water, and I'm tired of people not fucking knowing that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I know this has fuck all to do with Expedition 33, but this is my video, and I get to glaze whatever I want, and I am a contrarian, and I don't give a fuck what anyone has to say about it. Doomslayer solos the French. Bye.
And the game of the year is...
Doom the Dark Ages.
I just want to say to every neurodivergent person watching this in this room, because I know there's probably quite a lot of you.
Jennifer English, why the fuck would you ever say that? Oh, you're here for a teaser for the next review video? Is that it? It ain't no teaser. It's He-Man. The Masters of the Universe movie. Coming soon.